Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thanks. So, we have been joined by David, George. How are you? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your kind of background? How is your experience with Python and in generally programming? Very quickly, like in short sentences.
Well, hello. Yeah, sorry, I was switching to my headphones. Yeah, my name is David Morse. Um, so I have a Python background for the last 8 years. I'm a
Interesting.
cloud developer, an ETL system designer. I've been trying to get into data science for a long time, but then jobs keep dragging me back into data engineering. So, you know, but
Okay.
I keep looking into it, and I'm thinking about taking a data science training course and
Mm-hmm.
from MIT, doing a whole paid thing. And,
Mm-hmm.
I just like finding like-minded people on this topic
Mm-hmm.
to keep training the skills up because artificial intelligence, I've always known that it's important. And now it's
Mm-hmm.
really finally starting to get, some attention as of a couple of years ago. So I'm just continuing to pursue that dream of becoming a data scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Unless I find myself doing data engineering and cloud development forever. Not that I
Yep. Yep.
don't love cloud development and DevOps and
Mm-hmm.
Kubernetes and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Elasticsearch and Kafka and all that stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to, do something with the data, not just pipeline it.
Yeah, okay. I see your point. I see your point. By the way, this is one of the important steps in the whole. They say that data scientists seem to be cool people, but at the end of the day, the whole work is being done by the data engineers because they create the data, and it's a famous saying: garbage data in,
Oh,
garbage data out. So,
Okay, yeah, okay. So make another Kafka producer and make sure there's another impotent producer and
yeah,
okay, make another. I gotta balance these clusters for Elasticsearch again. I guess I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yep,
no,
yep,
I want to make models. Dang it! I want
yep,
to get
yep,
to the
yep.
part where yeah, okay, yes, can I make some models, please?
Okay, I see your point. I
Where,
see your point. That makes sense. That
where?
makes sense. Just
Uh,
wondering.
uh, I mean, it's just a sad puppy noise, but
Oh
I'm
no, I
just,
mean, no, I
it's not
mean,
that big
totally.
deal.
To be honest, I mean, it's not that difficult. It will not be that difficult for you.
Yeah.
You know, if and I'll talk about that a little bit today as well. So just wondering, if you could raise your hand, if anyone else is also coming from some kind of a data background. It can be data engineering or any kind of a data
Mhm.
background. Anyone else? Can you please raise your hand? No? Okay. Just one background, any kind of programming, Java, C++, whatever, like any programming background. Okay. Pranati, okay. Okay, interesting. Thanks. Okay, so three people. Okay, interesting. So I think almost all of them. Okay. So anyone who is not even from IT background, they are completely new to this world, completely new to programming. Anyone who's completely new to programming, like what is programming like? They are just wondering. I think no one is like that, right? So everyone is coming from kind of a core kind of programming background to some extent, one way or the other. That's my understanding. If that's not correct, you can send me a message so that I can modify the whole session accordingly, right? So that's the main important point. I will be having a session according to that. So the way I'm going to set up the session and is that first of all, I'm going to take questions from all of you as how to use Python for different purposes. But then also, if we have time, I'll kind of give you a very quick overview of what Python is and how you can use it for data science. Okay. But in the beginning, I'm going to let you people just ask me anything about Python. So let's start. So, yeah, any questions?
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. So, yeah, you raised the hand, Musa.
Yeah, I have a question. It's my first time here in this meeting, but I plan for moving in data. So I want to know what's the main difference between Python for data science and Python for programming only.
Okay, that's a good one. So, if you generally ask me what Python programming consists of, okay, so anyone who's coming from any programming background, they would know that there are some core components of any programming language, right? You need to know data types. There are usually four data types in Python: strings, integer, float, Boolean, technically speaking, right? And then you have four different kind of data structures, right? That allows you to combine multiple data into a single data structure. In Python, the core data structures are dictionary, list, set, and tuples, right? In other programming languages, you have something else as well. And usually in all of the programming languages, they have similar kind of things, right? And then after that, you look for some kind of conditionals, like how do you move your logic using if-else logic, right? How do you use functions, right? And then after that, you have this idea of for loop and while loop, right? So repetition. So that actually covers the basic core functional programming language, technically speaking. So if with that, you can do a lot of stuff, technically speaking, without getting into any specifics of whether you're doing it data science, whether you're using it for something else. It doesn't matter. No matter for what you're about to use a programming language, if you want to use a specific programming language, you need to know the syntax of that programming language and the thing that I just discussed: data types, data structures, repetition loops, conditionals, and functions, and so on, right? If you want to get a little bit advanced, definitely you need to also know about the object-oriented concepts in that programming language: inheritance and composition, and so on, right? How do you do that in that programming language, right? Once you have done that technique, I mean, again, I would say that you have completed learning programming language. Now, the use of it for different purposes, let's say web development. If you're a Python web developer, it means you will be working with different frameworks. If you're a data scientist, you will be working with different frameworks, right? As a web developer, probably you will be working with Django, Flask, right? And how to use Ginger templates and so on. It's a completely different world, right? But the experience of you with web development will definitely transition to being data scientist, right? Data scientist is not only about Python as a programming language, but it's also about using different kind of libraries, which are specialized libraries. So for example, I'm going to give you an example of one of the library called pandas, right? Even if you're a web developer, Python web developer, and you're using Python for years and years, right? You still need to know how to make use of a particular library called pandas, how to make use of a particular library called numpy, right? And you need to think about data, how to manipulate data, right? Thinking about data, manipulating data would require you to use Python programming language in that sense. Python as a programming language is just a tool, right? So the core, if your core is really strong, I can assure you that the transition would be really easy for you, because at the end of the day, it's just learning different libraries. And in Python, libraries development, open source libraries development is also very, I would say that you would see similarities in them as well. The structure is very similar. So yeah, the language in itself would not change it per se, but of course there are new libraries that you would learn, and the core concepts about that topic. For example, as a data scientist, you need to know how to manipulate data, how to understand data, and what is a machine learning model, right? And when a machine learning model is trained, there is an algorithm behind it. And sometimes you have to develop your own algorithm. For that, you need to know programming language, also like NumPy, SciPy, different kind of libraries. But also sometimes you have this kind of framework like scikit-learn, where you just don't need to know all of the detailed mathematics. You just use 3 lines of code and boom, you're done. You have fitted the whole model. You don't need to know even the whole of the mathematics. I hope so that answers your question as how Python can be different for different kind of purposes. Okay, awesome. So Pranati, you have a question?
Yes, so thank you so much for the introduction to Python. Since you've been talking about using that mostly in data science fields, what I wanted to ask you was coming from a course that is teaching more of data analysis, is Python a huge part of data analysis, or is data analysis itself a part of fields like data science and data engineering, through which I have to learn Python anyway?
Okay, so before I answer your question, there is another question that was being asked probably a little earlier. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to, answer that. So it's a question from Sufi. What level of Python skills is expected for a data scientist job? What kind of code interviews should I expect? Okay, so as I said, for data science, Python has become really one of the popular languages. Okay, so for a data scientist, you need to know Python skill set, which means that you need to know the basic data types, basic data structures, functions, loops, if-else conditions, and also you need to know the concepts of, depending on your role. If you're a very junior role, then you need to at least know how to make use of different libraries, classes, and objects, and you need to know the difference between the methods and attributes and so on. But if you're a little bit of senior role, then you need to know how to create them, how to create your own modules and so on as well, right? For the code interviews, things are changing, to be honest. As a data scientist, the code interviews are not the same as it is for the software developers. Sometimes they would give you, depending on, again, organization to organization, sometimes they would give you a data and would ask you some questions and would let you know that, okay, how do you solve this data related questions? And probably they would even give you a 1 day or 2 days time frame, and you'll have to submit your solution, right? And sometimes they would just give you most of the times, if it is a data science related job, the shift is that you have to work with the data using Python. It's not just Python generic kind of a programming skills. So they would give you some kind of a data, and they would allow you to, okay, I want this kind of a metric, just let me know how to clean this, and apply some kind of a basic linear model, and tell me what do we get, again, as a core data scientist job interview I'm talking about, right? But also the traditional code interviews that you see on the lead code, that's also always there. You can't just ignore them, of course. Lead code interviews are about your core understanding of programming language. It has nothing to do with, by the way, Python, right? Lead code interviews can be done with any other programming languages as well, right? It's all about understanding the algorithms and data structures, and how to solve generally problems using programming language, right? So for me, if somebody asks me, I would tell them that, okay, spend 70 to 75% of your time probably preparing for data science related questions in your code interviews. And then the rest of 25 to 30%, you should spend time on lead code, trying to crack the traditional kind of programming questions, where they would ask you a very kind of a complicated kind of a graph thing, and would tell you to traverse this and that and so on, right? Like a dynamic programming thing and so on, right? Sophie, if there is any other question that you need to ask based on my answer, please do ask that. Okay. In the meantime, Pranati, okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, so just reminding. So your question was that Python is used for data analysis, and you're saying that is Python being used for data analysis in one way or the other, or it's just that uh, its core purpose is to use it for data science, and you're learning it anyway? That's the question.
Yeah, that's kind of, yes. That's
Okay, so let me tell you about data analysis. So I still remember I have done projects, okay, which where I have automated the whole system, and believe you me, there is a lot Python can do. There is a lot Python can do. So I'll just give you an example where I hope so that would answer your question and would kind of motivate you as well. Even if you're not applying it for the data science and machine learning and the core kind of a data rich and I would say, really hardcore AI stuff, right? Even if you're not doing it for that, and you want your intention is to use it for data analysis, the kind of value that it can provide you is incredible. So I was working with, as a consultant with one of the company that I cannot name, because there is a little bit of information that I cannot give you about them. But yeah, so I was working with them, and one of their problem was, because the whole thing is with the automation, right? So they have CSV files coming in, right? And based on these CSV files, somebody has to analyze things and create a script, generate some kind of visualization, and create a PDF file and send it to the clients. And the whole competition between the companies is that when the game ends, you get the CSV file, who generates that report quickly and correctly. And the clients are actually going toward the vendors who would do that very quickly and correctly, right? So if I could generate that within a 60 second of the ending of a game, that would be incredible. And the only way possible for that is to use a tool like Python, right? So I would use Python to load the data set. I'm not using any machine learning, a complicated AI kind of a thing at this point, right? I'm just using it for simple data analysis, right? I just loaded the CSV file, analyzed the data, extracted out all the metrics, created a little bit of visualizations here and there, and compiled it into a PDF. Again, you can use Python for that. And even you can use Python for the automation task where you just send the PDF that you have generated to all of the recipients, right, within that 1 minute, right? And that would bring in millions of dollars. Just that simple kind of a project, right? That's one of them. I can give you tons of different examples where I've used like Python for different kind of automations and data analysis kind of tasks, which allowed multiples of millions of dollars saved. So Pranati, to answer your question, Python as a data analysis is one of the tool in itself, right? It's not something that will lead you to data science and AI. Of course it will. Of course it will, because it's a subset of data science and AI. Data analysis is one of the subset of that. But at the same time, if you're only learning it for the core data analysis, it's still desirable skill, and you must have it, technically speaking. Okay.
Yeah, that makes things a bit clearer. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So there is another question sent to me privately. So personally, I learned programming language Perl and concepts of programming like variables, looping, data types, reading, writing files. How easy to learn Python, and what's the best way to learn? Thank you. Now that's an interesting question. Actually, allow me to show you the how to learn Python, and I'll show you how easy it is. That's why I love Python, because one of the major reasons for the success of Python is that it's really easy. Okay. Can you
Yeah.
share? Can you see my screen?
I'll second that. Yeah, I see your screen.
Oh,
Right.
okay. So I'll quickly answer your question who asked me. So Nathan, I'm just gonna ask. I'm just gonna answer your question very quickly by giving you some of the example, and from there on, I hope so you would understand like how would you go about it, right? So I can go to Colab Notebook, right? Just online, like you don't have to install anything. You just go to Google Colab Notebook, new notebook, and voila, that's your Python engine, and you can start programming. um, uh, and yeah, so let me show you. So it would take a little bit of time. It should not actually take a little bit of time, but yeah, it took a little bit of time. But now this is my whole Python programming kind of a interface. I can, by the way, change this to, instead of a dark theme, I can change it to light theme. Some people like the light theme, right? And then I can just simply, if you see, this is a code cell, there is a text cell. In text cell, I am saying learn programming. This is allowing me to use the markdown. Some comments, list one item, right, and list two item. You see, Jupyter Notebook, right? This Colab Notebook allows us to not only learn Python programming or generate Python code and execute it within this environment, but it also allows us to write the comments beside it, right? So that makes the whole thing very interactive, and that makes the Python programming really powerful, right? So for example, you said that you have already seen the variables, looping, data types, reading, writing files. Let me show you how easy it is in Python. So I told you earlier that there are 4 different types, right? So there is an integer, 4, and there is some kind of a floating point number called 1.0. There is a string, I'll call it, string or whatever, right? Again, that's a string. String is just a collection of characters, right? And then you have a Boolean number like true. So these are 4 basic data types, right? And you can do any kind of mathematics with it, like calculations with it. 1 plus 2, that would give you addition, right? You can do multiplication, 5 multiplied by 6, right? You can start with the power, so 5 power 2, that is going to give you 25, right? You can divide 8 divided by 2, that is going to give you 4.0. 9 divided by 2 is going to give you 4.5, right? But if you try the 9 modulo 2, that is going to give you the remainder when divided by 2. It's 1, right? In the same way, this is just simple mathematical operations. And see, within 2 minutes, you have started even programming in Python. And it's really easy. It's not that hard, to be honest. If you want to use for loop or if block and so on, it would relatively be even much more easier. So if you are interested in seeing something specific, just let me know, Nathan. I'll try to explain that over here as well, right? So the whole process of transitioning to Python, if you're coming from any other programming language, is way too easy. You don't have to install anything. You can quickly just try out the basic mathematical operations, and from there on, you can look into the data structures like lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. And from there on, you can just have a look at the if-else loops, and then the for loop, and then the functions. You see, within 1 minute, I've explained all of the concepts that you need to know. And I can assure you that if we have, let's say, a dense 2 to 3 hour session, and if you are coming from kind of a background, I can give you a very quick kind of an overview of the whole thing within 2 to 3 hours as well. So it's not that hard, to be honest. Okay. So and the best way to learn. Okay. So the best way to learn is usually you need to have, again, there are different opinions of what is the best way to learn. Of course, practicing is one of the important things, learning by coding. But you need to know the bigger picture of what Python syntax says and how do you write code in Python, right? And once you understand that, then you try to solve different kind of problems with Python. Okay, that's the best way to learn. Okay, Nathan?
Thank you.
Okay, so if you have any specific question, you can ask that. So David, I see you have made some comments. So I remember trying.
Yeah, because I just want to also add to it. It's like, it is really easy. It gives you a lot of immediate feedback. You don't even have to set up a Jupyter notebook. Jupyter notebooks give a very good feedback, but when you really want to just get to start experimenting, when you install Python, it comes with idle. Could you demonstrate idle for a second? Because I think also demonstrating just how you can just open up a little browser app and basically just do a notepad version of stuff would also be useful for those who are asking how easy is it to learn. So please just add to your comment just to help demonstrate how easy it is. Could you just show us some idle stuff and how you can just, create a list real quick on idle and then count backwards on that list or something like that using negative.
I mean, you can use the idle. Let me see. So if you have a Python, let's say something like that. So
it just comes with an editor immediately. That you can just do quick temporary stuff, experiment stuff.
Yeah, that's the idle. But usually, I mean, again, I personally don't like idle, but of course, for automation and for a lot of stuff, like, I mean, you will be using, you can use that as well if you don't have even Jupyter Notebook. But for that, you have to install Python. I mean, for using the idle, you have to install Python, right? What I'm saying is like Colab Notebook does not even, you don't have to even install.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's all cloud based. That's okay.
Yeah. So over here, well, the idle that I'm using, by the way, it's not that hard to install Python. I mean, even installation of Python. Yeah,
it's really easy.
Yeah, so
compared to other programming languages, my gosh.
Yeah, you're right. But I would never suggest for anyone who's coming new to start using the idle or start using the Python, installing Python. Instead, I would encourage you to start with the Colab notebook because all of the basic stuff you can do over here. Once you feel a little bit comfortable with Python, and that would motivate you yourself to, okay, now install it locally on your computer and try to use it, right? So yeah, so in Python, as David suggested, I'm going to give you an example. So for example, you have a list of names, right? So I have Vakas, let's say David, right?
Huh.
Then Adam, right? And so on. And Nathan, right? And Kriti, right? And so on, right? So let me call it A. A is the name of list. So if you look at the list, so these are list of different names. If I want this list to be, I want to just reverse that list.
Oh,
In different
wow.
programming languages, you would find different ways, right? But
Yeah,
in
it'd be
Python,
complicated. You have to do also.
yeah, in Python, it's really easy. You just say colon, -1, and that would give you a reversed list, right?
Yeah.
So,
Start counting them here, count
mhm.
up every point, and then count backwards or forwards.
Yep,
It's
yep, yep.
great.
Yep. So that allows you, yeah, that's the interesting part. In the same way, you have interesting kind of libraries in Python. So for example, import NumPy, and the use of library is really easy. Import NumPy as NP, right? Now, NP refers to a NumPy library, and NumPy library can do really interesting stuff. So for example, if you're working with your data, so you can say numpy.random.randn, right? That would generate some random data for you. Let's say I am I'm generating 500 different numbers, right? So those 500 different numbers will be generated with 0 mean and 1 standard deviation. If I
Exactly.
use, so let me call it data, right? So let's say I've generated random data, right? That random data would be 5,000 different sample, and all of these samples are generated from the random normal distribution. So again, if you're coming from a mathematics background, you would understand that, right? So now, if you look at this data, we have 5,000 different points, right? Now, if you look at the mean of that, the process is really simple. You just simply say numpy.mean. Numpy allows you all of these interesting metrics. Numpy.mean is going
Yeah.
to give you, yeah. So the mean is very close to 0, right? Numpy.std is going to give you the standard deviation, right? Which is close to 1, as I said. The greater the number, so if you're using, if you're, let's say, generating 500,000 numbers, the mean will be even more close to 0, and standard deviation will be even more close to 1, right? So, and then you can use this data to visualize the whole distribution. And for that, you have also kind of interesting libraries. And that's the power of Python, right? You have a lot of interesting libraries, particularly related to data science, data visualization, and AI related stuff, right? So over here, you can use matplotlib.pyplot as PLT, right? That's a library that I'm
Wow.
referring as PLT. Yeah, and then you can just simply say plt.hist, and you can give the data as an input. And let's say you want to use 20 bins, let's say for now, right? So that would create, let me just generate the whole thing over here in
Huh.
this manner. So that would give you the histogram, right? And you
Oh,
can clearly see that it's a normal distribution with 0 mean and 1 standard deviation, and so on. So for those of you who are actually asking how easy it is to learn, I hope so now it makes sense that how easy it is, right? Because it just takes a couple of lines and you have generated the data and you have started working with the data. You're now visualizing the whole thing. And that makes it powerful.
okay. So this is very interesting. What's most interesting to me is that, when you show me that Jupyter notebook, I figured it was like locally installed or something like that. Colab
Yep.
notebooks, I don't think they were there back in my day.
Yep. No.
Wow. Okay. So yeah,
Yep.
I guess you don't even need idle if I
Yep.
see your point there. When did Colab notebooks become a thing? Jeez. Okay.
Yep. It's been a long, long
And so,
time now. Like
so,
yep.
so I guess that does make it even easier for people to learn because now you don't even have
Yep.
to install that
Yep.
notebook. You just need to go to Colab. Wow.
I would
I
even
didn't realize it was there.
I would even encourage all of you, if you have time, just open your Google, just write Colab notebook, open a new Colab notebook, create a new notebook. If somebody is having a problem, they can also ask me. And yeah, if you want to play with it, you can directly start playing with it. And if you are having some kind of a data,
Yeah.
let's say I have some kind of a data. Usually, let me actually share my screen.
I had no idea Google was offering this. And it's then just
Yep.
saved up to your Google account like another Google Doc. Wow. Okay. That's pretty
Yes.
cool on
So,
Google's part.
yep.
You I just Googled I just Googled Colab and there it
Yep.
is, I guess. So
Yep.
yeah, if you want to start learning Python, he has a point. You can literally just Google Colab and start doing stuff immediately.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. Interesting.
It wasn't there back in my day.
Yep. exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you can also, by the way, just over here, upload the data set. Let's say if you're looking at something, you can upload a data set, the CSV file, and so on, and start reading the file. Again, if you have some kind of a CSV file, you can read that from here as well as you can also like get some CSV file, online, and then you can give that URL to Pandas library, and that would allow you to analyze the data, right? So let me actually stop share and let me bring in some CSV file. Again, if somebody is having any question, please ask me questions. So I'm just waiting for the questions. In the meantime, I'm also kind of showing you how easy it is and in what different ways you can use Python as a programming language, particularly for data related tasks. So if anybody is having question, please do ask me. Otherwise, I'm just gonna show you, how to use Python for bringing in the data from in other sources and how to analyze the data. Okay.
I have a question. Can I?
Yeah. I
Okay,
can hear you.
I want to know all the possibility offered by PyCharm community. I can find the feature with collabs.
I'm sorry.
I want to know
Okay.
with PyCharm,
Yeah.
PyCharm,
Yep. Yep.
all the possibility offered by PyCharm, I can find them with collabs.
Yes. Yes. Actually, yes. Yes. You can find all of the possibilities of Python with Colab. Of course. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. 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 Of course. Yeah. Um, Let me bring in, but at the same time, Python Colab, Google Colab is running on the Google machine, Linux, right? And which means that it even allows you flexibility, right? If you're running a very complicated kind of a program, you can just change the runtime, right? And just change runtime type, and that would allow you to even, if you can use T4 GPU, right? That would actually, create for you. You can also purchase additional compute time, right? So that's really powerful because you can scale your system over here, okay? And over here, you would see that you have a specified RAM. So you have a 12 gigabytes of RAM and about 100 gigabytes of disk space, right? So that allows you to run in this session different kind of, you can execute different kind of functions, which even takes time, but you're not utilizing your local resources. Instead, you're using the cloud resources. Okay, so yeah, I think somebody did ask a question. No, okay. So I'm gonna show you one thing over here as how you can very easily use Python for this interesting task of analyzing the data. Right. So let's begin. Okay. So over here, if you see, scikit-learn is one of the library. Okay. Now scikit-learn library contains a module called dataset. It contains multiple different datasets, right? So I'm just calling this function fetch California housing, right? And I will call this function and I will store the dataset in the variable called housing, right? It's a housing dataset. Okay. Now I'll show you how easy the whole process is. Let's say you have this dataset. You would see that this dataset is now a pandas data frame. It is it contains the data, which is array. It has a target name. It has feature names and so on, right? So I can get the data. Now if you look at the data, that's the data, right? If you look at the housing dot feature underscore names, that would give you different feature names, right? And if you just create a data frame, that's really easy. Again, you will use a different library over here. So I'll simply say import pandas as PD, and then create a data frame, which is like creating Excel like spreadsheet, right? And then the columns is gonna be equal to this feature name, right? So let me see. So you see, this is how we have created. So we have 20,000 different houses for which we are calculating our, this is the input: median income, house age, average rooms, average bedrooms, and so on, right? And the target of this data set, right, is what? Is we are predicting the price of a house, right? So this is the target. And the data is this with these features. So I've created this as a data frame. Let me call it DF, right? And given this data frame, we are going to predict the price of a house. Okay, let's say that's a machine learning task. And if you want to understand, different kind of variables, it's so easy. You just simply pick one of the variable. Again, you can just call a function describe. That would actually describe all of the different kind of variables for you: the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the 25th percentile, the median, and so on, for all the different kind of columns, right? So using these kind of different kind of functions from these different libraries allows you to really work with the data in this interesting manner, right? So you see, within few lines of code, within 3-4 lines of code, I have loaded the data and I have started using the data, right? And again, I can show you the machine learning application for the whole thing as well. But even if you're not interested in the machine learning for now, you can analyze it in different manners. So, for example, if you look at the DF, right? I told you that we have matplotlib, right? So you can you have actually import Seaborn, that's another library for visualization. And then you can say CNS dot, you can use pair plot, right? And give the DF as an input. That would create interesting pair plot for you. It would take a little bit of time. Let me actually stop it and run it again. It would take a little bit of time because pair plot looks for all of the possible plots for between different variables, right? Let me see. So we have, okay, so let's have a look.
So just a question here, if
Yep.
when you import the Seaborn as SNS, and there was a certain option that I used, which is called as dist plot,
Yep.
and that was in the Jupyter notebook, which I had installed. It wasn't on the Colab, but it
Mhm.
it did not read it because it said that now dist plot is not read by Seaborn anymore. So dist plot and hist
Yep.
plot
Yep.
were
Yep.
a
Yep.
little.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So what happens is that these libraries evolve, right? Which means they're constantly being improved. While they're improving, they would allow you to make some changes, and you can make some changes in those libraries as well. And that's the good part of it, by the way. It's not a bad part. Okay. So for example, let it run. I want to show you this pair plot. It takes a little bit of time because you have different kind of variables, and you're trying to look at different kind of distributions among them. There are 20,000 different samples. So of course, it takes a little bit of time to create all of those relevant plots. It kind of creates all of the plots. But yeah, I'll show you the disk plot over here separately. But also you can, by the way, use the ChatGPT for this whole interesting purpose as well. So for example, without getting into the question, I know what you're saying. So there is a function called disk plot. And if you're using distribution plot, okay, so before I go on that, can you see over here? So this data frame, right, this pair plot allows you to look at all the different kind of variables and their distribution with each other, right? So on diagonal, you're seeing the histograms, right? And on the off diagonals, right, you're looking at the the kind of scatter plots among different kind of variables. That's not a good way to visualize every single thing in the data set because there is a lot of information over here. But just saying that with this single function, you can create something interesting like that as well, right? So yeah, without getting into the explanation of that, the main purpose over here is to just let you know how easy it is to use Python for different kind of purposes, right? We have loaded the whole data in data frame, right? And then we are giving this data frame directly as an input to this function, which allows us to generate these interesting kind of visualizations, right? And now let's coming back to the particular question that she asked. So you're talking about the disk plot or disk plot with T or
Uh,
without T?
I put in the T, if I remember correctly. I did
Okay. Yeah,
include
that's
T.
the point. Yep. Okay. If you did include T, so you would see something like let me first of all, median income. So you want to, if let's say you want to look at the distribution of the median income, that would tell you, that would give you this plot. But at the same time, it would tell you that this is deprecated function, right? And will be
Exactly.
removed in Seaborn, right? It means you should probably not be using that. Okay, that's a good one. I can solve it directly, but that's not a good thing. Instead, first of all, I think all of you should appreciate Python, that it gives you very clear messages about your code. If there is something wrong going on, the Python would clearly tell you. Like, it's very easy to debug Python in comparison to other languages. I mean, I personally like, one of the major reason for me for liking Python is that the error messages are very clear. Okay, and now it also tells you, please adopt your code to use either displot, okay, or histplot. Does that make sense? So it actually gives you this suggestion that, okay, instead of a dist plot, we have changed it to dist plot, and you can also use the hist plot. Now, if you use the dist plot, now dist plot is little different than that. You can, by the way, give this whole kind of a thing to ChatGPT, right? And ask ChatGPT, let's say, to explain and solve the following, right? It will actually give you good suggestion. But you can look at the documentation as well. So for example, over here you can replace it with the dist plot, and then you can, again, that's actually correct. Add KDE equal to true is going to give you the same result. So if I just copy that and paste it over here, and I change it to dist plot, and one of the variable is KDE. If I just make it true, right, and that would give me the same kind of a plot. You see, the same plot without this warning. Make sense?
Right.
It just tells us the distribution of this variable median income, right? But the dist plot is more than this simple distribution plot, right? If you want this distribution plot, like you were doing it with the dist plot, right? Instead, you should use the dist plot with the KDE equal to true. But there are some other kind of functionalities as well. So I can go directly to the documentation over here for the dist plot, right? And it will explain the kind. So kind can be hist for histogram, right? So if you're using kind equal to hist, it's equivalent to hist plot. If you're using kind equal to KDE, it's like KDE plot. If you're using kind equal to ECDF, it's like ECDF plot. Again, you don't have to worry about knowing about all different kind of plots. This is something you will learn in the whole. If you're joining the boot camp, definitely you'll learn about all of that different stuff. But the important part is, for all of these functions that we're using from all of these different libraries, the good part of Python is that they have a very good documentation that you can refer, right? It will explain what it does, all the different parameters that it has, and it will also give you different kind of examples at the very end, right? These are different kind of examples where you can load the data set and directly look at the visualization in these 2 lines of code. Imagine we are just using 2 lines of code, and which other programming language allows you to generate these nice visualization within 2 lines of code? But Python does, right? So yeah, over here you're using the same function displot for creating these different kind of visualization. You see, that's the power of the displot, right? So it's a distribution plot, but you can create multiple plots, right, over here. But yeah, does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I think I went into Python programming, which I should have not probably. It's just that I wanted to show you that Python programming is fun. It's not hard. It's really easy. You will really enjoy it once you get into it. Particularly the immediate results that you can get with the Python programming. I cannot show you the whole kind of automation thing, but I can actually show you a little bit. So for example, if you look at let me see. Yep. So over here, 3 point. Yep. So that's it. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So this is one of the thing that I had done previously, like for one of the client, right? a lot of time ago. So if you see, I deployed it to AWS again. You would learn it in your bootcamp as well, like how to do the whole thing. But I'm just showing you that you can choose a file, right? And that file can be any CSV file. Okay. Let me choose a CSV file from a particular place. And actually, I'll also show you the CSV file, the exact CSV file that we have that we can use. But sports analysis, right? And abbreviated give summaries, sample data. So let's say we have used this CSV file, right? Imagine we want to generate the Word document. It will generate the Word document. It will download it, right? You see, it downloads it. Do you see the download on the right side?
Yes.
Okay, now let me open that Word document for you and share with you what does that Word document contains. Now, I have given a CSV file. Now, the Word document that it gives you is this. From that CSV file, we have extracted all of that information, right? All of these nice visualizations and so on, right? So now we can convert it into a PDF and send it through email via something as well, right? But you see, all of this, how hard it would be. It's not really that hard, but the amount of value that it generates for a company is too much, right? So again, that's the power of Python. You can just use simple scripts that we discussed and use it for these complicated and interesting tasks. Make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, any other questions? I actually did not even show you the scraping part as well. I just remember. Yeah, I just remember that we also have in the bootcamp, we also kind of go through how to scrape a website, right? So for example, from LinkedIn, you're scraping all of the different jobs related to data science and so on, right?
Ooh.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So web
Okay.
scraping is also a very interesting thing that you can do with the Python as well. Very easily, not really hard. Probably we don't have that much of a time to show you the whole thing, but you can pick any website and you can scrape the data set and then start analyzing that data set as well.
Nice.
How can I learn to read Python code, especially when it's a very complicated snippet? Okay, that's a good question, Sophie. So basically, you just break the code into different parts, right? If the code is written by somebody else that you cannot communicate with, right, which means that you have taken the code from online, you can use ChatGPT as well, by the way. And ask ChatGPT to break it apart, right? But for that, one thing is necessary. One thing is like the backbone of the whole process is that you need to know the core building blocks of Python. If you don't know the core building blocks, it would be very hard, right? Because even if I'm using a library, even if I'm using a complicated code snippet, at the very end, they will be using that core structure, the data types, the data structures, the functions, the conditional loops, and so on, right? And if you know about the object-oriented programming concept, I think so you're good to go. You would really understand what that person is doing. Although you might not understand the exact thing what they are doing, but at the very least, you would understand the structure, the way they are going about it. Most of the times, because I'm a data scientist, I'm not working too much with the web app development, but if I look at the code from the web developers who have written something in Django or Flask or something like that, like very different libraries, and it's a Python code, I actually do get the gist of it. Although I don't understand internally what's happening, but if I look at the code, I would understand that, okay, there is some kind of a decorator function happening on, and the data seems to be going in through this, and the processing happening to be like that. I don't understand the whole thing, but I would get a very big picture of it, right? Um, so can you give an example of how you break the code into parts and try to understand structure? Okay, I can do that. But if you have your own code, you can actually give me that as well. And I can show you that as well. So for example, actually, let me show you an example. If you have your own code that you want to break apart, you can just copy and paste it in chat, and I can share with you how you can do that. Okay, you do not have one for one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll take in the data set that we were talking about over here, this housing data set. Let me actually fit some kind of a machine learning model, right? So if you look at the housing.data, it's a NumPy array, right? It's the data set that we so it's housing.data. Let's say I'm creating the whole thing over here. So that's the input data, and the output data is housing.target for each of the house with different kind of features. Of course, this is data science related stuff. You don't have to know, but if you know, I mean, it would be fun exercise for you, right? So usually you will be given this kind of data set, right? The input and output, right? You have some features of the house, and you're predicting the price of a house, right? And in this single block, I'm going to create a little bit of complicated code that you might not understand, and then we will use ChatGPT to make you understand this code. Okay, so you have data X and you have Y output, and let's say you want to make use of scikit-learn to create some kind of a machine learning model. Well, you can use the decision trees. So if I say from scikit-learn.tree import decision tree, right? Regressor, right? So you have a class called decision tree regressor. Okay. Let me see. Yep. And then the next step is to just instantiate that class, right? Usually that would be a model, right? And then we give to this model, we just fit this model by giving the X and Y as an input, right? And finally, we just calculate the accuracy of our model by saying model.score by giving X. Again, we are not dividing it into a train and test and so on. But nevertheless, it's a simple piece of code where you take the data, so X comma Y, right? Where you take in the data, so we have achieved 100% accuracy, right? So of course, I'm fitting the data and testing it in the same data, so it's overfitting, but still, we have achieved 100% accuracy. What does that mean? It means that I can predict, right, for the input data, the output, right? So this output is exactly the same, right, as the output of the Y. So if you look at the Y and the prediction, the true values and the prediction, they're exactly the same. So we were able to capture this pattern, right? Now this piece of code is doing the whole machine learning thing. You might not know what decision tree is, but who cares at this point, right? Because you have already fitted the decision tree model, and you don't need to know all the mathematical details within these 3 lines of code, right? So that makes the whole Python really powerful. Now, coming back to the question of Sufi, if I just want to understand this piece of code, right? And even let me actually bring in the whole thing from this data set as well. So if you remember, this data set is coming from this part. So I can just, clear the whole thing and put it like this, right? So these few lines of code will fetch a particular data set, create input data and output data, create a decision tree model, and then find out the accuracy of that decision tree model, right? So this is a whole pipeline in a way, in few lines of code. If I just give it to ChatGPT and ask to please explain line by line the following, something like that, right? So it would just break the whole thing and would explain the whole thing. Okay, and then you can continue discussion with the Python about a particular line and try to understand it more. For example, you can ask what is sklearn.tree, right? Once it completes, you can ask this question, and it will kind of start explaining the whole thing. So it's like communication. You will start communicating and would try to break the whole thing up. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So there is another question by Musa. Is it possible to start learning Python for data science without the basics of Python if I already master another programming language like? Okay, that's a good question. That's a fair question. Actually, you can directly start using it for data science. If you have understood, what I just said in terms of using it for applying a machine learning algorithm, it means you have a good, fair understanding of generically programming languages, which means picking up Python would be not that hard for you. Well, you will even learn Python program. You don't have to learn Python programming to the best of your abilities. Like, you don't need to be expert in Python. In our bootcamp, that's a little bit funny thing, but in our bootcamp, we only spend probably 1 week, not more than 1 week. 1 week is supposed to be for Python. Within that 1 week, we are actually teaching from like expecting that you don't know anything. And particularly if you're coming from that background, definitely 1 week is way more than enough for you to not only learn about Python, but also about pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, Plotly, and web scraping and so on, right? So yeah. So I think within 1 week you can actually be very good at starting the whole thing. This is what we have experimented multiple times. Any other questions?
I just appreciate this.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Hey, so yeah, I mean, Python, I think, is going to be, I would say, one of the major programming language, particularly if you see there are other programming languages that are even being developed where the syntax is not changing. I don't exactly remember. There is another kind of programming language called Mojo. Anyone knows about Mojo? It's not Mojo, I think. It's let me see. Mojo programming language. Yeah. So the Mojo, the programming language. There is a programming language called the Mojo, right? Well, Mojo Lang. I think it's Mojo Lang, something like that. Yep, Mojo Lang. So even there are people who are trying to develop new programming languages. They are making sure that the simplicity and the syntax of Python retains, and they would improve on the Python core kind of a structure. And even there is a lot of improvement happening in Python as well. One of the complaints that you would get probably from the Java people and from the C++ people, or from the people who are coming from another programming languages, that Python is very slow. Well, that is not the case. That is the case, but if you compare it with the C++, of course, it is the case. But they are working on it, and they're trying to improve it every single day. And on top of it, you have a lot of different kind of frameworks and libraries, which kind of solves that problem to some extent. And sometimes the simplicity allows for it, so yeah, and yeah. So for anyone who's coming new to programming language, Python is definitely should be the first choice because it's the easiest to learn. And for those of you who are already aware of programming languages, I think for you, it's just a matter of 2 or 3 days. If you really give 2 or 3 days, you will be really good at Python programming. And if you give 1 week, I can assure you, you will be very good with not just Python programming, but the things that I just showed you, the NumPy, the pandas, and all of the relevant libraries for data analysis as well. So whenever you have a data, your first choice would always be Python. So yeah. Okay, so if there are any questions, I will be available here for the couple of next minutes. Otherwise, yeah, otherwise, have a good rest of the day. And you can fill in the forms as well if you have any questions. And yeah, you can explore the boot camps that we are offering as well. In that, we have particular sessions related to data science with Python. So you can have a look into that as well. Okay. So Sufi is asking, is it expected for a data scientist to know object-oriented programming in Python? In my experience, when working with advanced libraries, I need to work with object-oriented programming. That is correct, Sufi. That's why I said in the beginning that if you are working as a data scientist and you don't know object-oriented programming concepts, like core concepts, really like how inheritance work and how the polymorphism, and it's okay. You can get away with it if you're not too much aware of the whole thing as a junior data scientist. But at the very least, you should be knowing how to use the classes and object-oriented concepts. You need to know the difference between what attribute is and what method is, right? And yeah, so what private attributes are, right? And yeah, so this is important. So and particularly scikit-learn, because scikit-learn is totally working on classes, right? Every single, so for example, I gave you right now a little bit earlier the example of a decision tree a regressor, right? What is a decision tree regressor over here? It's a class, and we created the object of that class. Let me actually show you. Go back and show you something like that. So Sufi, if you see, what did I said? Or what did I do over here? So I created the class decision tree regressor, created the object of that class by keeping all of the parameters as default, and then I call the function of that class fit and score by giving the data as an input, right? So it's important for you to understand the object-oriented concept. But if you're really advanced, then you need to know it in much more detail for you to create your own classes. So yeah, instance of the class. Yeah, instance of the class, object of the class. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. And yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, have a good day. If anybody is having a question, I will be here for a few minutes. Otherwise, everyone, thanks a lot for joining. Have a good rest of the day. And yeah, enjoy learning. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Well.
Thank you.
Oh, and how often do you have this meetup? One more time. This is a final question.
Sorry?
How often do you have this meetup?
Well, Adam, can you please answer that?
Yeah, so we have different events for the known lunch and learn. These sections we have every day from Monday to Friday, every weekday, and we do have evening sections from from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. is the time. So if you want to join the lab sections, you can go to the Meet app or YouTube or LinkedIn to enroll to these lab sessions. Again, so just a reminder. So for tomorrow, we also have different sessions. Let me share the links. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so if you are if you fill out this survey link, and you will find there will be schedules for upcoming. So for tomorrow is Ask Me Anything sections with the data scientist from Bin Data. This Thursday is April 25th. We will have a career in data and AI sessions. And this Friday, we will have an info section about self-paced data and AI bootcamp. Yeah. So let me resend the link in the chat so you can have access to it.
Right. Thanks. Oh, okay, cool. Appreciate it. I'll check out the recording and everything. Thanks so much, Ahmed.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.